So, we've proven that you can build an empire in 8 minutes.
Have we?
Yeah, or some reasonable facsimile of 8 minutes. More like 20 to 25 minutes. But, 8 minutes is almost there.
We'll pretend.
Yeah. I thought today that maybe we could try to expand that empire.
Like you do.
Yeah. I've heard of a territory that's far beyond the normal game realm. Have you heard of it?
I haven't, but I imagine you're going to tell me all about it.
Yes, I will tell you about it because today we're going to be reviewing 8 Minute Empire Lost Lands. Okay, so the expansion to 8 Minute Empire Legends gives you an extra board to play with. That's the biggest selling point to the game. And with that extra board, there are some extra setup rules that you have to follow that kind of ignore the setup criteria for the first game. You have to place down one of the portal variant tokens that you would have been able to play down as a variant in the previous game, but this time you actually have to place one down, because if you don't place one down, it eliminates your primary method of getting into the new land. Because you can see with the Lost Lands, there's a river that connects it where you can actually cross like normal, but in the underground cavern, which is the other side, is actually the side that I like more. You can see that there's no river connection, so the only way to get into this land is by going through the portal. So in order to do that, you have to have a portal set up in the primary islands where you're going to be starting. The other interesting thing about the new setup rules is you have to have a starting region that's next to the portal. That's a requirement of it. And you have to have another one that is in the new land, whichever one you're using, whether you're using the underground cavern or you're using the Lost Lands, that you're not able to use this one to start the game, but you can place armies as if it's the starting region like you normally would be able to place it in this one. Another thing that you have to kind of add into the setup when you're playing this game with the expansion is, regardless of whether you're using the underground cavern or you're using the Lost Lands, you still have to remove cards from the game, and it indicates how many cards you're going to be removing and which cards based on this little number that's in the corner here. So based on whether you're playing with 2 through 6 players, you have to remove a certain number of cards with a certain number in the corner, and it explains that in the instruction booklet. A really cool thing that comes with this expansion is all the new cards. You can see like the great artwork and a lot of interesting monsters that kind of are adding to the ones that you already had in the game, and I really like the new ones. The biggest change that comes with the expansion is not any of the components that are added to the game, but the way that the game is played. And gone are the days of the market row that we had in the previous version of the game without the expansion. Now, each player is dealt a hand of 4 cards, and from that hand, you select simultaneously which card you're going to buy, and you have to do that based on the same cost that you can see right here. First card, so it'll be this one, would be free. Second card would be 1 coin. Third card would be 2 coins, and the fourth card would be 3 coins. So what happens is the oldest player, that's the rule that they settled on, gets to count to 3, and at 3 everybody turns their hand over and has to select a card. They have to say which card it is, so it's like, say, third card, and you have to play it face down on your player mat. After you've done that, you have to determine who said which card first. So if I selected the third card and I was the first person to select a card, I have to pay my coins that it's worth, and then I get to be the first player here. So each one of these markers determines what you get as an extra benefit for your order that you selected your card. These things kind of run like the card abilities do, where you can use them if you're using a related ability. So something like the flying one, if you're the player 3, you get a flying ability. The flying ability allows you to move over, just like in the previous game, over the waterways with 1 movement instead of the 3 movements. It reduces it by 1 for each flying that you have to a minimum of 1. And this one here allows you to place an extra army, but you have to have the place army action in your hand and the card that you're using. So that's kind of the fundamentals of what is new with this game in terms of mechanically. And now we're going to kind of go into some of the components and some of the new variants for the game.
As you might have guessed from Jeremy's discussion, there's a lot going on with this game as far as new components are concerned, variants, rules, but don't be alarmed. There won't be a quiz, and I'm going to help you through. So the first thing you'll notice is obviously we have a new player board. This side is the Lost Lands. This offers 4 VP at the end of the game to the player who controls the most of it, as in the most regions. It's important to note that the river, although it divides us into 3 sections, doesn't create separate regions or islands. Probably better to use the term island in this sense. And it still costs 3 movement to cross them. So essentially this is all one big playing field for you guys to party in. Whoever owns the most of it gets those 4 VP. On the other side of the board, you'll see the underground cavern. This is similar to the Lost Land. At the end, it's worth 4 victory points, and that again goes to the person with the most regions. The 3 sections of land, as you can see, there's a division with the lava here, are not considered separate, and it still costs to go across the lava, as indicated by these little dotted lines here. Also, if a player controls more crystal regions, so these areas with these lovely blue crystals, than the other players at the end of the turn, he gains a crystal token, which are one of these little kind of conch shell almost shaped things, little broken diamonds. They're worth an extra victory point at the end of the game, and if they do run out, there are only 6. That's it. There are no more to add to the game. In this expansion, we have a few player tokens to indicate turn order. There's a first player, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth for each possible member of the game. In one variant of the game called the Frantic Turn Order, you play with as many players as necessary instead of only 1. In this instance, when a player picks a card and then later announces it, he grabs whatever turn order he wants, and each, you can see, comes with a benefit or nothing at all. So in the case of player 1, you get an army. In the case of player 2, you get a coin. Player 4 gets nothing, and then 5 and 6 lose coins, and I went backwards here, but number 3 gets a little flying ability, which is pretty boss, because flying is awesome. Everybody wants to fly. That's what we learned in Shazam. Kind of. Anyway, the player with the first token always goes first, and he may not pick to go last, which is kind of interesting. And as I've already stated, each token gives a temporary effect, and it basically wears off once you get a new one. That's basically it for that. Another variant in this version of the game, or within this expansion, is called the Open Sea token, which is up here. This is basically placed next to some sort of water pathway. They're called connections by the rule book, but these things here. Players may move armies across them to any other water connection that is not currently connected. Players cannot move their armies the opposite direction from an unconnected water connection to an open sea connection. Another variant that this game adds is the Open Sea token, which you see up here. Essentially, this is put onto the board at the beginning of play. You connect it to one of these water pathways. So let's say these little dots here, for example. If this was open, that could have gone there. This would have been another option. And essentially what this allows to happen is you could go from this landmass over here onto the waterway and then get to another open waterway, like maybe around the edges of the board, for example. But you can't, let's say, go from this waterway up here again. It just makes it easier to travel in a one-way type flow. with your imaginary ships. Because we're all Vikings now. Vikings are pretty cool. Another variant are the faction tokens. There are 4. There's Knight Cursed, Arcane Ancient, Mountain Dire, and Forest Noble. Basically, they get placed on an empty region. So let's say, like, I could stick one here, for example. And at the end of the game, the player who controls the space gains the faction token and can add it to his card sets or her card sets. They have to choose one or the other, so it would be either Arcane or Ancient, and if they have a lot of Arcane cards, for example, they can use that to get extra points at the end of the game. Another variant added to the expansion are the faction tokens. So there's 4 of these. There's Knight Cursed, Arcane Ancient, Mountain Dire, and Forest Noble. At the beginning of the game, they're placed on an empty region. So let's say this one just goes there. And at the end of the game, the player who controls that area will gain this token. And he can, or she can add it to any card set that they desire. They'll pick one, so in this case, either the Forest or the Noble, and that will help add to their set and potentially earn them more points at the end of the game, which can really turn the tide of this war. I think that one of the most exciting things about the expansion is that it adds several new leaders, which I'm going to go over briefly. The first is the Undead Empress. This character has the ability that when you destroy an army, you can replace it with one of your own. You also pay 1 fewer coin for cursed cards. That is terrible English, but whatever. Next one is the Frog Warrior. Your leader army is worth 3 armies instead of the typical 2. You also gain 1 victory point per region you control that contains another player's city. The Bramble Witch. Once per game, you may place the Thorns token. The Thorns token is this lovely token right here. Oops. Okay. Basically, when you place that on a region, players can't move into or out of the region. However, they can move through the region. You also gain 1 victory point per region you control that contains another player's leader. Next one is the Bandit King number 2, the Younger. When you destroy an army, you steal a coin also. You may pay a player a coin to use his city. 1 coin per army. And the final new leader we get is the Bat Rider. Your flying also counts as a movement. You also gain a victory point per region you control that contains 2 or more opponent armies.
So, what did you think of Lost Lands?
Well, I think, surprisingly, that this game kind of made you lose a bit of the flavor of the original. I think that the hand variant for the cards kind of threw me a little bit, and for some reason it didn't really feel like 8-minute Legends anymore, or 8-minute Empire Legend?
8-minute Empire Legends.
I don't know why I word vomited everywhere.
Yeah. It had the market row, but I did think that the simultaneous action, like where you have to bid on the cards, or you're not bidding, but you're like buying the cards out of your hand and you're doing it with like a clock on it. I think that was actually in an answer to kind of the complaint that it's not actually 8 minutes, because 8-minute Empire, the original, and Legends, you can't really complete it in 8 minutes. It's not it's not a reasonable assumption to believe that you could actually do it in 8 minutes. Like I said early in the opening, it's more like 20 to 25 minute Empire, but this you actually can get closer to the 8 minutes because you're doing it faster like that. you're not having to sit there and agonize over what's in the market board. You're having to do it quickly, or you don't want to be those last few players that end up losing coins if you're like acting really slowly.
Or if you're even playing with that variant.
Yeah.
But I actually found like the shouting, at least with like a larger group, a little chaotic, especially if you were playing with, you know, certain types of people who were unruly or very competitive siblings.
Yeah.
Family members, whatever. Like, it was a little much for me. I think, like, to be honest, that it was almost a limiting factor. I was really happy when I picked up this game. I was like, oh, it adds a 5th and a 6th player. Love that, because I feel most games kind of cap out at 4. Maybe they have a 5th, but the 5th player just seems like an afterthought, and it makes the game really long and unpleasant.
Yeah.
For me, I actually found that playing with a larger group, it was a little unpleasant. If you played with a variant, it could be a little brutal with the player tokens. Like, depending again on the group with the shouting and the noise, I was just like, this. I just want a quiet Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
This is not a quiet Sunday anymore.
It really comes down to your gaming group.
Yeah.
I can see some gaming groups having no problem with it. But moving on beyond the buying mechanic, what do you think of like the new land and the options for that?
I thought that aesthetically it was very pretty, like the Lost Land. I mean, it goes with the cover. That's what was advertised. You found the Lost Land. The Cavern, though, didn't really feel like a Lost Land because it was such a specific location. Like, this is a cavern. Yeah. We just happened to go there with a portal. Like, it didn't feel Lost Landsy to me, which is really poor English, I'm aware. But it didn't feel quite right. I know it's your preferred board for reasons that I don't quite understand.
I just like it aesthetically. Out of the two, that's my favorite. But I like the fact that you can only get there through the portal. I think that's kind of cool that you have to go to that territory to get there, where the other one had the ability for you to go there over the waterway as well. I
just didn't feel like it fit with the theme of the game very well, or the name of the game. It just didn't feel right. Yeah,
I can definitely see that. Though it does add in the crystals, which is kind of cool, having that extra little variant that you can play with.
Extra money. It was a similar, I think they called it shards in the first one. Those little blue things that I won, or almost won with that one time.
The elixirs.
Oh, elixirs.
Yeah.
They look like shards, kind of,
elixirs.
In a way. Maybe.
But. Yeah, I like that from a flavor perspective. I like the new leaders. The new leaders are cool, and how they kind of play with specific variants. So, like, if you want to use the frog or the bramble witch, you have to play with the leader variant.
The army, yeah.
Was it
leader army?
Yeah. So I kind of like how they balance it like that. I think the frog guy's my favorite.
You like the frog guy?
Yeah, the frog guy's cool. I like that. He's like a frog warrior. Like, literally a frog warrior.
I like the Undead Queen.
Yeah, that was
the one time I like Zambies.
Yeah.
Because basically Zambies.
The green color's cool, the Undead Queen.
Very nice green. You know how I like my green.
Yeah.
Green.
And beyond that, I mean, I like the fact that you can add in like the open ocean one, open sea, where you can travel from one specific location to any location on the board. That kind of opens up a lot of territory that you can now go to. With the waterway, yeah. You can. Yeah, you can go like to any place on the board that's connected to the water, and that kind of allows you to move your army around a lot faster. Yeah. So now you have a couple of different locations that you want to try and control. You want to try and control the area that has the portals. You want to try and control the area that has the open sea token. There's like a lot of those kind of extra movement areas, which is really cool. And that wasn't really there as much in I guess there was, the connections between the islands in the last, without the expansion.
About the components.
That's always a good part of every expansion, to kind of see what the components are.
So, like I said earlier, I really didn't think the underground cavern really fit with the game, but everything else I felt was pretty strong. The cards are good quality. They're thicker. The art is nice. I can read everything very clearly some of the artwork I would say is a little generic, but the cards hold up. They don't really bend so much. Like red flags, red flags, low card quality. I like the wooden pieces. Obviously, they're painted wood, and unlike some games, the paint doesn't chip off, which is very bueno, because I do not like paint chips all over my stuff.
Yeah, I know that was the most of a shame that was for any game was probably Tiny Epic Zombies, because that's such a good game in every other aspect, and the pieces are really cool, but they chip a lot. I don't know why the paint chips off so easily on those pieces.
But we don't like it.
Yeah, but shameless plug, go back and check out my review of Tiny Epic Zombies.
And I felt like all the components fit nicely with the theme, and the art was nice. I liked all the colors. I think everything kind of worked pretty cohesively. I don't really have any complaints in that department, except for the janky castles. I thought they looked kind of weird in the original, the 8-Minute Empire Legends, and I looked at them again here, and I'm like, silly little castles.
They are kind of weird looking. They could have picked a lot of different shapes for them.
They were trying to mimic the Disney castle a little bit, because it has the same basic, very pointy shape.
Yeah.
With the little circle on the bottom for the door. And it doesn't work for me.
No, but I mean, I appreciate them doing a castle and not doing just like a triangle.
That's true.
Or like a bigger, like some other shape that's just a shape. I appreciate the fact that they're actually doing a castle.
Basic geometric shape like a rhombus. Adorable. Go back to geometry, Derek.
Yeah. Wait, what? It's an actual castle shape. Well, beyond that, so now that we've done components, is there anything else you want to bring up on the expansion?
I mean, nice tiny box. You know, thin.
That's very true. I like the artwork.
Considerate as far as shelf space is concerned.
Yeah. And you could actually get the lid off of the box,
yes.
which was an issue with the last one.
Yes, that is also good. So, compact, easy to get on a shelf. I mean, it's not very compact when you actually lay it all out, though. I mean, that took up a fair amount of the table with the original.
Yeah. But still, you have kind of a small table.
Okay. I have a tiny table. What do you want from me?
A small gaming table would easily accommodate the game.
Oh, it accommodates it, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, you look at this box and you're like, oh, it's going to be teeny tiny and fit very easily on a very small space. No, honey, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So, like that, easy to get on the shelf. And it's very cost efficient. I mean, I got this from Red Raven directly on a sale, and I paid $10. I don't know if it's still on sale. And then there was some shipping costs, but very, very cost effective. And I like that, because sometimes people jack up the price of their expansions, and I'm like, well, now I'm just not going to buy it on principle, because that's rude.
Well, sometimes the expansions cost as much as the original game, which is a bit much, especially when it's not a standalone expansion. But this one's not like that. I mean, it's not a standalone expansion, but it also is not the same price as the original game.
Nope. It's about half, or a little less than half.
Yeah. Do you think you'd recommend this expansion for people that are fans of Legends?
I'm a little torn, because like I said, I think that the flavor of the game changed a lot. And it's not a bad game, but I don't feel like it still feels like 8-Minute Empire Legends to me. So I think if you're okay with, the changes we discussed, yes, go for it. If you just like 8-Minute Empire Legends and you think it's perfect just the way it is, this might not be the expansion for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's an essential expansion. Like, there's certain essential expansions out there. Like, I would say, like, Scoundrels of Skullport is an essential expansion for Lords of Waterdeep.
Yeah.
But this one, I don't think you have to get it. But if you want a little bit of variation, you want the extra leaders, you want, like, the other play styles you can play with, you want to be able to toy around with the buying from your hand mechanic. Yeah. The one thing I will say about that is it kind of takes it away from one of the big selling points that was in Legends. And one of the things that I said in my Legends review is the fact that I like it because it's almost like a baby Tyrants of the Underdark.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to talk about Tyrants, because you know how in the expansion of Tyrants the cards look slightly different, so you can tell when the expansion cards are coming up? These look the same, so you don't have that problem.
That is good, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to totally waylay your point, because I'm just like, I'm talking now!
But yeah, the expansion does kind of take it away from the this is baby Tyrants of the Underdark, which I
Yeah.
like because I really like deck building games, and I like games where they mix kind of deck building with the area control, which is a fairly unique concept. There's not a lot of games that are out there like that.
Right.
And having like an 8-minute Empire at Legends be a kind of a gateway game to that is cool. But if you're playing with this expansion, you're not really getting that out of it anymore because it's the simultaneous action, which is different from like the buying from a market row. But it's still similar. It's still there. It's a little bit of the flavor, just a little bit further away from it. What would you say in terms of a score?
Oh dear me. Maybe like a 6.5 or a 7, I guess, somewhere in that
I'd probably be about the same.
general bracket.
Yeah. Well, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, please feel free to comment down below. What are some of your essential expansions for games that you've played in the past? Like those kind of expansions that you never will play the base game anymore without those expansions. Hit that like button and hit that notification bell if you want to be seeing everything that we post in the future. And I guess we're going to catch you in the next review, right?
Well, yes, but also if you do want to buy a copy of this game, there's a link down below in the description.
Yes, that's very important. We don't want to ignore the links down below in the description.
Comes at no extra cost to you and it helps out the channel.
Exactly. That's a great selling point. So now we'll catch you in the next review.
For real.